All right, let's put it all together. We're going to build an equation with amplitude, midline, and a b-value. And now the important thing we need to recognize about the b-value in our sine graph, okay, is just thinking about what it means. B-value is the number of periods in an interval of 6.28 or 2 pi in interval of 2 pi, okay, or 6.28, okay? So let's go ahead. First thing we need to do is find the midline. That's what I like to do. So you'll notice that the midline is kind of marked in this case, but you can go ahead and do what we've talked about in this video, which is simple. Find the max, find the minimum and the maximum, add them together and divide by 2. So 10 plus 2 is 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So I can go ahead and put that y equals to 6 if you needed that. Now we go ahead and find the, now what we need to do is also find the amplitude. Okay, that's going to be our second step. So as we find the amplitude, what we do want to do is make sure that we are zoomed in nice. And the amplitude is going to be counting from the midline up to the top. So in other words, if I start here at the midline, I count up, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Pay attention to the scaling. So the amplitude is equal to 4, and the midline we found was equal to 6. Now, if you are having a hard time with the mid amplitude, just remember that that is the same thing as max minus the min divided by 2. That is the amplitude. And so we can find that simply just by clicking on the maximum, which is 10, and then the minimum, which is 2, and then subtracting them. So 10 minus 2 divided by 2, which is going to be 8 divided by 2, which is going to be 4. So that verifies that amplitude right there. Now, the last thing that we need to do once we have the amplitude in the midline is we need to go ahead and look at these graphs and determine what is the b-value. Okay, so remember the b-value, as we've stated, is the number of periods or the number of times there's been a full oscillation of this thing between 0 and 6.28. So I'm going to trace that out, and I did leave black marks, black lines on here to help us out. But if I trace this out, watch what happens. I start here at the middle, which tells me that it's going to be a sine graph because I'm on the midline at the y-axis. And what I do is I just count up to the top, back down to the middle, down to the bottom, and back up to the middle. That is one full turn of that period. And then we just keep going to the top, back to the middle, back to the bottom, back to the middle. That is 2. And remember what we're looking for is this 6.28. And we started at 0. Notice 6.2 is right here. So we're going to count them all out between 0 and 6.28. And then I just keep going to the top, back down, and back to the middle. It makes that kind of nice sideways Z. And that's one way you can identify it. And you'll notice we are at 6.28. So how many is that? That is 1, 2, and 3. So now we know it's sine. So we're going to go ahead and overlap this graph. Okay, and let's say y, let's call it f of x equals to sine of x. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my amplitude in there. We found our amplitude to be 4. The one thing we learned earlier is that amplitude is in front of the function. Okay. Then I'm going to add my midline to it, plus 6. Okay, and that goes right in there, and that'll move that up to that same midline. Now, the one thing we do have to pay attention to is in our directions, the b value is attached to the x value. Okay, so the b value is attached to the x value. So that 3 is going to end up being placed right here with that x. So let's go ahead and do that. Plug that 3 in right there, and you'll notice that it completely overlaps the original graph. right, hope that helps with this activity.